Hello, and thank you for joining our discussion today on business and IT transformation. My name is Pete Pizzatello with Cast Software. I'd like to welcome you and our guest presenter today, Forrester Analyst Marc Cecere. Marc is the Vice President and Principal Analyst serving CIOs as an expert in IT organizational design. He has helped redesign more than 200 IT shops across the globe. His research includes the design of IT organizations, IT governance and process and planning, as well as metrics and M&As. Previously, he had worked with Giga Information Group, where he was a manager and analyst focusing on IT management and IT services, and worked in industry for more than 20 years as part of the Sun Life of Canada organization, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and CSC Consulting. Thank you for joining us today, Marc.
Great, thanks, Pete. Hi, folks. Today, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different. As Pete was saying, my background is in the redesign of IT organizations, and I've been doing it since about 1997. About 3 years ago, I started looking at not just IT transformations, but also business transformations. And I've been lucky enough to work with some of the best folks in the world in companies like Deloitte and TCS and Accenture and McKinsey and folks like that to understand how businesses are transforming. So we're really going to talk about two things today. We're going to talk about business transformation, but we're also going to talk about how that impacts the IT organization and what you can do about it. So we have a busy agenda. We are going to be really hitting on 4 areas. One is really defining what a business transformation is. And we're going to do that because I've seen about 30 or 40 definitions of it, and I want to at least scope what we're going to be talking about. Then we're going to talk about what's driving these business transformations. We're also going to talk about what the challenges are. Now, one of the studies I'm doing these days is interviewing about 36 companies to talk about how they did their transformation, who they partnered with, what the problems were, what things they would do over if they had to do it again. So a lot of that research, which is ongoing, and I'm only about halfway through it, is going to be brought in for when we talk about what the challenges are. And finally, we're going to be talking about the implications for stakeholders, and it's 2 stakeholder groups in particular. One is leaders within IT organizations. I'm going to focus on a number of specific roles that are impacted and impact these transformations the most. These would be people like architects, planners, leaders of applications, vendor management functions, things like this. And then we'll finally, I'd like to finish up with, if you do nothing else slide, what you can do with regard to these kinds of transformations. We'll start off by talking a little bit about what is business transformation. This is something that I'd say about 15 or so analysts within Forrester we argued about for, I think it went on for about 2 weeks or so before we finally came up with a definition that we were all pretty comfortable with. It involves fundamental changes to major business processes, structure, models, and culture. Now, in almost every transformation I've seen, you've seen these groups impacted. They're not all impacted to the same degree, but they are impacted directly. And most of the work we see today, in business transformation is really looking at the models and culture of the organization. Most transformations require major system and/or technology changes. I see this with Oracle. I see this with SAP. I see this with Salesforce.com, where they were an intrinsic part of the transformation. But these are not simply just installing these systems and configuring these systems. Along with these systems goes a significant amount of process change, changes in data, changes in how companies interact with customers. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the changes in structure, incentives, and roles, and these transformations require oftentimes dedicated teams crossing organizational silos. I'd say the one common element I've seen in business transformations today, which is a little bit surprising to me, is that every transformation I've seen just about has required the company to become more global, more globally consistent in terms of processes, in terms of technologies, in terms of how they deal with channels, and less locally oriented by geography or product group. And that surprised me a little bit because one of the drivers for these transformations has been flexibility. And the feeling was if you're asking for flexibility, sometimes that focus on the local can inhibit it. But it's been pretty consistent that companies are becoming increasingly more globally oriented.